Yeah, subscribe to the channel. It was pouring rain outside, with heavy drops of rain on the windshield. But Jaeger did not pay attention to this, just having time to turn on the wipers to see the road. He hurried to call an important client. In his head, thoughts about what he had achieved in this life were spinning. Jaeger was dizzy and could not even remember happy moments. Working in a taxi, he suddenly glanced at his boss with an angry look. For some reason, he did not immediately fall in love with him and deliberately gave him a worn-out car. Having stopped at the traffic light, Igor thought about himself. That's why I didn't choose another profession. Now I wouldn't have turned the ram and didn't run into anyone. The green light lit up, and Igor again added gas. But then he heard him knocking under the hood. That's right. The walker is fine. He's breathing, and they'll say it's his fault. No, Igor definitely didn't want to have such a fate. But he couldn't do anything because he was not local in this city and until he got the right connections. Sad thoughts continued to overcome him. He even remembered how often the dispatcher gave delicious orders to his driver, and he remained with nothing, satisfied with the penny pulling. He is a round orphan, and in any situation, he could only rely on his own strength. Having driven 2 more crossroads, Igor wanted to turn into an alley to shorten his way, but suddenly a pregnant woman jumped out in front of his car. She deliberately waved her hands as if falling and blocking his way. Igor barely heard a word. Completely crazy. Is living boring? He was not clear. Why is this stranger risking his own life, barely throwing himself under the car? Having jumped out of the car, he yelled at her again. You're tired of living. I'm going to hurry for the call. The boss will take my skin off if I'm late. Could it be that it was impossible to pass through the underground passage? The girl sadly went down to the curb and cried. Igor understood. He shouldn't have done that. She is pregnant, and it is not known where she could have rushed. What if she starts fighting? And then, right, she's gone. All these thoughts ran through his head with the caravan. And to at least somehow smoothen his guilt, he offered the poor man to get into his car. Let's go, or you'll get completely wet. It seems like the rain is not going to give up. Having sat in the car, the girl looked suspiciously at him. Igor even felt the cold under his shirt. Having taken these frantic thoughts away from him, he stretched out his hand and said, My name is Igor. I work in a taxi. In response, what he least expected to hear sounded, And I am Tanya, a former prisoner. The cold ran over Igor's back again, but this time even stronger, as if he was being poured from a hose. A crazy thought flashed in my head. I picked up the passenger. You can't come up with it on your own. Tatiana noticed the trembling in his hands and hurried to calm down. Calm down. I'm just an ex-itch. And there's nothing wrong with that, if you're not against women being behind bars too. No, why are you? Igor replied nervously. I didn't even think about it. Anything can happen in life, and no one is guaranteed. I can't even say what will happen to me, for example, tomorrow. The pregnant passenger put her hand on his shoulder and spoke calmly. I'm not an extrasense, so I can't say what will happen to you tomorrow, but I'm sure that in the near future you will start a new life. Tatiana's words sounded somehow unexpected for Igor. He suddenly thought that it was tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, that the boss would find an opportunity to catch up and punish. That's when a new life will really begin. Without money, and possibly without a job. Igor was thinking about this and at the same time recalling his childhood. After all, he never knew his parents. He was taken to an orphanage in an absolutely small orphanage. One might say the youngest of all the caretakers of this institution, and they treated him with no love at all. Although where did she get it from? If the teachers of that case disappeared for a whole day and left them unattended. There, Igor learned to survive without hoping for anyone. He had practically no friends, and all because the sense of justice made him a scapegoat among the same. And Jaeger didn't know what was going on outside of this settlement. But he dreamed of breaking out of the hateful walls as soon as possible and going where he would be appreciated and loved. But where? There are no relatives. And if there are, they don't care at all about the existence of some orphanage there. Moreover, the educators in the orphanage have constantly claimed that his parents have abandoned him. After that, he didn't want to get close to anyone at all. It's just a child's fantasy. While there was an opportunity and the state was helping, Jaeger learned how to drive and got the right. Already then he knew that it would be his piece of bread. In any case, he had not yet seen other prospects for himself. From a deaf village, he soon moved to the capital. The idea was to find a job and somehow settle in this city. Jaeger has not passed a single tenth of the office to settle. But he found only a taxi where the boss was a proud and overbearing type, Sergei Petrovich. Everything was solved with the housing. Igor successfully rented an apartment on the outskirts of the city. However, the long relationship with the boss constantly made him nervous. There was no day when Sergei Petrovich didn't just cling to him. Sometimes Igor thought he was the center of attention or just became a scapegoat. And there is no room for that if you don't leave the office. However, he was not going to quit and decided to try to prove what benefit he could get from his actions. And once Jaeger even allowed himself, in the presence of the director, to say what is best to use to increase efficiency. Then the conversation began about buying new oil, and Jaeger joked that he knew no worse than a professional in this regard. The director praised the guy for his initiative, but Sergei Petrovich was angry. After all, it was not him who was different, and now the director will not put him as an example to other employees. However, the boss could not do anything, especially since Igor became almost the best friend of the director. At the same time, Sergei Petrovich took it to heart and began to wait for a convenient moment to quit. But the guy worked so skillfully that he did not give a reason to look for him. However, after today's trip, it is not known what may happen, because the boss did not just smile when he sent him to this challenge. Winking, Jaeger got distracted from the memories and looked at his satellite. If it's not a secret, then what month is it? It's soon to give birth. The 7th has passed. Tatiana, smiling, replied. Jaeger stopped in front of the traffic light again. And I probably will never have children. I'm all alone and still haven't found my life partner. And I don't think I'll ever find one, because I stopped trusting people. You have everything ahead of you. You just have to believe in yourself. The girl replied. If you want it, you can change your life. I see that you're a good guy, but you're also a reliable one. And it's a good thing. You just don't notice it and think that everything is going well. Maybe you're right, and I really need to change something in my life. Tanya shook his shoulders and answered Igor. Tanya immediately said that she would definitely pay him, but she needed to get to the address. Then she called the street and the house number. Igor shook his head and said through his teeth, Come on, I don't need anything. I understand that you don't have any money. Do you know how many passengers I had like you? No, what does this have to do with it? And despite the fact that they had just said, Wait, I'll take out the money, I'll pay. And as I brought them to the address, they only blinked their feet. No, you won't deceive me, and there's no need to do it. I won't take money from you. I'll bring it for free. The girl bowed her head and almost whispered, I'm not a beggar if you thought about it. Yes, I had to spend enough time where you constantly think about freedom. But it doesn't mean that I lost my human appearance and can't answer for my actions. You're wrong, and I'll prove to everyone that it's not true. Here she speaks some half words again, and here, as you wish, understand, if you don't want to waste time. Igor pulled his eyebrows and answered in a jittery way. Okay, let it be your way, but keep in mind that I won't take you further than the address you gave me. I have orders, and I may not be in time. Tatiana nodded her head, and the next half an hour, they were driving in silence. Igor looked at the road and the girl on her knees. She didn't cry, only her shoulders were shaking. Having fixed her hair, Tatiana looked at Igor and smiled. He did the same, but restrained, as if he was afraid of an unexpected turn. Finally, when they arrived, Igor noticed that this was the bank department. You see, you don't carry the bank so that I won't be pulled over by you later. Tatiana waved her hand in response and left the car. Igor, as promised, did not take money from her. He forgave her the trip, realizing that in this situation a girl has no money. Not only is she pregnant, but she has recently been released from the prison. And while she was walking to the bank building, he continued to watch her. Igor did not touch the place on purpose, waiting. What will happen next? He already thought that now the sirens will ring, police cars and ambulance will rush to him. But 5 minutes passed. There was silence around. People were doing their own business, and there was no alarm. Having made sure that Tatiana was not going to rob the bank, he pushed the gas and went further. But barely overcoming the intersection, Igor knocked on the door and said, "He will now complain to the boss, and he will definitely leave me without money." He arrived late to an important person. He didn't say anything. He was really unhappy to look at Igor. And that was enough to understand that there were grand disassembly in the office ahead. He was silent all the way, afraid to say a word. And the client did not hurry to talk, stuck in his tablet. A couple of hours later, Igor was free and drove towards the office. The heart inside was so squeezed from the feeling of nothingness, because he won't even be able to offend the boss, and he will be right if he punishes. Although there was a hope that the client would not complain. Leaving the car at the parking lot, the guy ran into the office building. Oleg walked past him and smiled angrily. There was always a feud between them. Oleg intercepted the most fat orders and talked as if he had misled Sergei Petrovich with his methods. Igor, as soon as he thought about it, immediately became suspicious of him, and all his hatred for his colleague was displayed on his face. His eyebrows were bent in the arc, and his mouth just mumbled. The boss came out of his office. "Ah, Igor, I need you. By the way, what's wrong with your face? Try to guess." "You hate me," so you wriggled. "Well, come with me. I'll add more degdy to your physiognomy." "Well, that's it. After such words, you can't expect anything good." Igor was not tense internally and went to the office. There was a massive table in front of the window and a worn chair nearby. Strange, but the interior of the office has changed dramatically. Previously, flowers stood on the windowsill, and now they are gone. And the table was different, new, and this one was dragged from the dumpster. Igor turned to the boss and met with his dismayed gaze. Yes, this is now your future interior. I brought this chair here on purpose. You must feel what it is like without a roof over your head. Do you know why I need it? No, you probably just have an extreme sense of humor." Igor answered with a friendly voice. "You are right about honor." After slapping him on the shoulder, Sergei Petrovich replied, "And I can really joke, but not in your case. I know everything about being late. I thought that if I want to challenge another city, I would not know anything. Sorry, Sergei Petrovich, but I got into a traffic jam several times, and the car leaves the best to be desired." Igor turned around as best he could, but still understood that it was useless. And if the boss had arranged the show, who was clearly there to comfort his self-love? That's what Sergei Petrovich was not engaged in. He could look in the mirror for hours and fix his tie. He probably loved himself more than anyone else. When he pointed at the chair, the boss offered Igor to sit down. "No, thanks, I'd better stand up." He answered nervously and clenched his fists. "Okay, it's your business. Maybe it's for the best. I put a satellite tracking beacon in the car on purpose. How did I know that it would serve me well?" "What are you talking about, Sergei Petrovich?" "About the fact that I saw your entire route. You stopped several times, then looped through the holes, and even managed to get near the bank. Just don't say that your account is open there, and you decided to check his condition. Of course, our phones were canceled." Igor got hot when he heard the word bank. After all, he himself joked with Tatiana so that she would not rob him. Did she really rob him, and he is now a co-partner? Trying to drive this thought away from him, Jaeger politely asked again, "Have you seen anything else?" "No, but this is enough for me to punish you. Only I don't know how to do it, so that you remember for the rest of your life. Let's just get away with it." Jaeger's begging words. "Weak. This won't do you any good," Sergei Petrovich replied in a dreadful tone. And he barely said it, as the same Oleg entered the office without knocking. He looked at the boss and asked without any shyness, "Well, have you already told him? I don't understand what's going on." Igor jumped up to Oleg and carefully stood up to him. "You're fired, my friend," Igor replied in a cheerful and angry tone. "But you can't do this to me. I have always done the most difficult and cheapest orders for you." "You once crossed my path," the boss said harshly. "You shouldn't have been so rude to the chief. He stopped paying me a bonus because of you. Do you think I can forgive you?" "No, Igor, you're mistaken. You are fired. Get a bill so that I don't see you here anymore." Panura lowered his head. Igor slowly began to move away from the boss's office. But on the halfway point he stopped and looked at Oleg. "You say, friend? Well, let's see." An old, worn-out chair immediately fell into the eyes of the table. Igor thought about himself. how Tatiana was right when she said that changes would soon begin in my life. After that, he no longer wanted to stay in the walls of this office. On full automatic, Yeager went into the accounting, took the money, and went out. The wind blew his hair, and he silently looked into the void because the uncertainty that had been waiting for him ahead was waiting for him to die. The bank suddenly remembered, and Yeager shook again. What if it really robbed? And Sergei Petrovich didn't let me go on purpose. And then the police will come? The taxi driver waved his hand and braided his hair. Now he could only move on public transport. And if he doesn't find a job soon, he'll have to walk on foot. But it's not clear where to go. Igor did not master any other profession. He has no experience and no experience either. It turns out that he is a man without a profession, without a family, and without a tribe. Somehow he became so tired of it, and he barely held back not to cry. Passing people turned around, thinking that something was wrong with the man. Igor stood near the bus stop and whispered something to himself. At this time, several buses had already passed in the right direction, and only the grandmother, holding a heavy bag, suddenly stopped near him. "Grandson, why are you sad? The weather is so good. The rain has stopped. The sun is warming up." "Yes, you are right. The weather is what it should be. But I was not happy with her. I was fired today, and all because I crossed the road to the boss." With his left eye open, the grandmother came closer and whispered, "Don't worry, you did it on purpose. There will be a holiday on your street, but remember, when he comes, don't drive him away. This is your destiny." "You're talking?" Yeager asked in a hurry. "I just hear some secrets." And while he waved his hands, trying to hear the answer, the granny managed to hide behind the turn. It seems that she only appeared for a minute to share with Igor one more secret. In complete confusion, he got on the bus and went home. In the store, Igor bought a loaf of white bread and a packet of milk. He knew that Maruska was waiting for his master, and as soon as he knocked on the lock at the door, she stood up to Yeager's feet and began to rub her back. Having stroked the little one, the former taxi driver now said, "Only you are glad to me, Maruska." The cat heard her name and was quite murmured. Yeager took off his shoes, went to the kitchen, and poured milk into a bowl. Maruska left his legs alone and began to eat. She looked at the owner and licked the milk. In her eyes there was so much devotion that Igor could not stand it and closed his face with his hands. So he stood next to the window, barely holding back the emotions that had come to him. But suddenly they rang the doorbell. Igor even trembled. "Weird. I'm not waiting for anyone." Carefully looking out the hallway, he asked right from there, "Who is there?" On the other side of the door, the answer was heard. "It's me, Baba Klava." "Igor, open the door. We will have tea with you." Not understanding what's going on, he still opened the door. Here's the third time. "What are you crying?" the woman Klava asked in a jiffy. "Come on, I'll wipe your face. That's better. And don't cry." "Sorry, Claudia Ivanovna," Yeager said with an apologizing voice. "I had a hard day today, and for fun, and especially for tea, there is no reason. Maybe you'll come another time." "Well, how about Yeager? I'm a nanny, if you haven't forgotten. I'm years old. I could not treat my beloved neighbor." After shaking his head, Igor blurted out the blame. "And it's true. And I got so busy with this job that I forgot about everything in the world. And first of all, about my personal life. And don't look at me with surprised eyes. I know that you don't meet anyone. And it's time. You're not small, and you need a family. You won't even notice how old you'll be. Claudia Ivanovna, what about your family? Shouldn't you be sitting at the party table now?" "Oh, Igor, you didn't understand anything." The neighbor started to sigh deeply. "My children and grandchildren come only for a couple of hours or less. They have their own business, and they are not interested in sitting near the old woman. If my grandfather were alive, I would definitely not be bored, and so I sit sometimes near the window and watch others walk with their children or grandchildren. Now I understand." Yeager called me with sadness. "But I am not destined to become a family man. I am constantly at work, and I spend all the time to ensure my existence. Although in the near future I will have to save money, because I was fired. What a pity. Yeager, but you shouldn't despair." "Hey, why are we talking about this on the threshold? Let's go to the kitchen. I'll take care of you." Igor could not refuse such an offer. They went to the kitchen together and covered the improvised table for an hour. It seems that Granny Klava decided to continue her birthday. She cut a piece of cake and put it on a plate in front of Igor. Eat and vitamin salads, sausage, cheese. Don't look at me. I'm not eating much. I'm not young anymore. Give me an appetite that is not the same as before. Although, as I remember, it was in my youth. Tell me, Claudia Ivanovna, is good coming back? Well, it happens that you will do something good for an unfamiliar person, and then good things happen in your life. Of course, Igor, and you're still asking. I helped many, and they answer me the same. However, recently few people come, but I'm not offended. I've already done everything I could. And why did you ask about it? Probably I brought someone for free. And you know everything. Jaeger said in a flabby voice, yes, I brought one girl. She didn't have any money to pay me. I had to let go of the world and wish her good luck. She was in such a hurry that I didn't ask her anything. Jaeger deliberately did not tell the neighbor that the girl was a former. There was nothing to be more troublesome about. On the other hand, Claudia Ivanovna would hardly have started to praise him. She is not the kind of person to look for flaws in the one she respects. Tea drinking ended around 2:00. Igor took Claudia Ivanovna to the kitchen. There was an unfinished salad, several pieces of cake, plates, and a couple of sandwiches on the table. He carefully put all this food in the refrigerator. But it's necessary to think about what to do next. Having launched the laptop, Igor began to look through the information on the vacancies on the work sites. Experiences and education were required everywhere, which he certainly did not have. And this meant only one thing: to go to the loader. You definitely won't need any special skills there. Just make it in time and do what you're told. Since that day, Igor has had a new life. He no longer turned the car's handlebar, but he was constantly working in the fresh air. And from this, he wanted to think less and less about the foggy prospects. Was it really for this that he came to the capital? After thinking over everything that he had planned, Jaeger suddenly came to the conclusion that he had almost done nothing. Yes, he managed to settle in Moscow, but what next? What next steps? He did not know this yet because he rolled down a step lower and will have to start all over again. There were some special moments of childhood when he literally had to pull out his freedom of choice with his teeth. And if it wasn't for the, and if it wasn't for the, when you don't like something and you can give it back. Igor was sleeping at night and didn't sleep well. His thoughts were tormented by the fact that life is only about work and home, and there is no place for love in it that would warm his soul. That's right, said Claudia Ivanovna, that you need to have a loved one next to you so that you don't suffer from loneliness later. It's so hard, especially at an old age, when it seems that life has frozen. And you don't know when that day will come, and you will be able to breathe with a full chest. However, the neighbor was not all so happy. She admitted that her children and grandchildren are coming for a short time. They have their own interests, so the grandmother needs only in a good mood. This future scared Igor. He didn't want to stay an old man who didn't need anyone. So 2 weeks passed. Igor got used to the new job and no longer thought that he was once afraid of his evil boss. Together with this, the image of Tatiana began to emerge more and more often. Although he did not try to think about her, she is in a position and will hardly want to share his problems. No, it is not worth talking about this, especially dreaming, but the desire to see her overpowered and gave food for thought. One of the days, waiting for the bus to stop, Jaeger saw the old woman who was walking towards him. She carried a heavy bag on her shoulders, which almost hung down to the ground, and waved to him with her hand. Jaeger could not believe that it was the same old woman who said that there would be a holiday on his street. Having closed his eyes, he did not open them for almost a minute, and when he looked in that direction again, he did not see anyone. He had the feeling that this was hallucination. But where would they get it if their health was okay? Igor decided that he needed to rest well and not go to work on Saturdays. Having arrived home, feeding the cat, he lay on the couch and fell asleep. But it didn't take more than half an hour for Marusha to start whining. Igor woke up, lowered his head. "What are you doing? I missed you." The cat, in response, purred and jumped on the couch. And as soon as she was next to his face, she hissed. Igor was disgusted by such behavior of his pet. "Someone scared you, Marussia." "Wow." And the fur got stuck in the oak. Igor sat down and then heard someone squeaking in the door. He had a cold on his back as he did that time. They shook their hands, and the tongue seemed to dry to him. It was not even possible to say a word. Igor got up from the couch and went to the hallway. Suddenly, a scratch on the door turned into a confident knock. But it wasn't a hard blow, but as if a woman was trying to knock. Exactly. It was probably the neighbor, Klavdia Ivanovna, thought Igor, and hurried to open. But what was his surprise when he saw Tatiana on the threshold, and also in an expensive coat. "Hello, did you recognize me?" she asked happily. "You won't forget. Can I go, or are you out of your mind? I'm sorry that you really don't care about your feelings." Igor answered and let Tatiana into the apartment. "So many unpleasant events happened in my life that I'm even afraid to talk about them. And I thought you forgot about me. I had to make a lot of effort to find you. I didn't think that it's so easy to get lost in Moscow. But she's from the capital to absorb people," Igor said with a more cheerful voice. "But you spent so much time away from home, so don't be surprised, and I'm sorry for reminding you of your past." "Everything is fine, Igor," Tatiana answered and went to the kitchen. "I still have a lot to do, but I'm sure of one thing: the past cannot be forgotten. It is so soaked in dark spots that I will not wash off for the rest of my life." "Wait, what are you talking about?" Surprisingly, Igor asked, although he suspected that this was the reason. "That's what Tatiana showed on her round belly. All the secret spots are here, and if you have time, I'll tell you." "Yes, of course, I'm only after work, so I'm in no hurry." "Haven't put the kettle on the stove?" Igor asked. "Maybe you want to eat?" "No, I was in the restaurant, had dinner there." "What are you looking at? You can't understand how I've become so radical. And where did I get the money to go to a restaurant?" "To be honest, yes," Jaeger replied in an embarrassed manner. "The day you almost fell under the wheels of my car. Now the former one, you had old things, shoes not in size, and no money. By the way, I hope you didn't rob the bank?" At the same time, Jaeger showed her expensive things. Tatiana laughed and put her hand on his palm. "No, it's okay. I didn't need to rob the bank. I just took what I had rightfully." There was awkward tension, because Tatiana's words that she took something they were more likely to be robbed. And Igor expected her to take it now and say, "I really took money and bought expensive things on them." But at the same time, he realized that it was impossible to turn such a thing alone up to the modern security system, especially pregnant, and to discharge the situation and at the same time learn as much information as possible about her. Igor calmly said, "It's good that I didn't have to do anything illegal. Once you have already violated the law and paid. By the way, what happened? Why were you imprisoned?" Tatiana poured tea for herself and, having made a couple of sips, began to speak. "In general, this is a long story. I'll start with the fact that I got pregnant from the colonel." "Really?" Jaeger called out and almost threw up. "Yes, it's true, but I had to do it. He promised that I could go on a mission. It's a shame to say this, but being close to him was the only chance to be released. I soon found myself in a position. The boss even took me to the UZI, and there it turned out that there would be a duel. Can you imagine? 2 boys. Not quite exactly, but I imagine." Jaeger replied humbly, because it was the first time I heard that the prisoner was pregnant with the boss. Usually, women are already in a position to get there, or maybe they try when they come on a date. But why is that? You won't be able to love them. Tatiana tilted her head to the side and got sad. It was clear that Jaeger's words touched her heart, but he could not imagine what was happening in the soul of this girl. Their first meeting showed how defenseless she was, and then a sharp change in her image and a confident sincerity towards a person who was not her. "Understand, Igor, I had no other choice. I had to go out to get revenge." "I see. So it's not just like that, but to fulfill my cunning plan, I got pregnant." "Wait, don't judge like that if you don't know anything." "Okay, I won't interrupt, go on." Jaeger took a sip of tea from his mug. That evening, Tatiana told him about her hard fate. She had to go through a lot and, first of all, through a series of humiliations. And all because her father, now already dead, decided to marry again. Mom died just 3 years ago, and he was played with. Tatiana did not speak back, realizing that her father is an adult man and is free to decide his own fate. Besides, he was a big businessman and owned a lot of assets. This gave him a lot of opportunities in terms of personal life. Naturally, the sacred place is not empty, and in the life of Yevgeny Maximovich, a beautiful woman appeared. She turned out to be years younger and easily took over his heart. Tatiana saw how he was going crazy and didn't notice anything around. However, she also had a small business, and business at the firm did not allow her to fully control the situation. She had a breakup between home and work, but everything changed when the son of this woman appeared in their family. She persuaded him to marry them, not only because she forced Yevgeny Maximovich to marry them by the way of the wedding. The wedding was celebrated in a chic way, even with a big crowd. Wait, what does your father do? He didn't understand what he was doing. Judging by your words, he was a little over, and I don't believe that at such an age a person loses his mind. Well, why not? He was perfectly aware of himself. That's why he loved female attention and married him for the second time. Of course, I talked him out of it as much as I could, but will he listen to me? Dad decided for himself that it was better for him, so he chose a new passion. And sorry for interrupting. Igor was guilty. There were similar problems in my life. Not exactly about the wedding, but about that. I didn't tell you that I was an orphan then. I never saw my parents, and I still don't know where they are, what's wrong with them. I spent my childhood in an orphanage, where I studied to become a driver. From there I left for adult life. It's hard when there are no close people around. Tatiana continued. I realized this when I was behind the bars, and the guide to the colony was arranged by my stepbrother Alexei, the son of my father's new wife. I don't even want to pronounce his name. They both made me quite nervous. Igor realized that he needed to take a break. Let's cook something together. I understand that now you can afford restaurants, but I don't have such opportunities. They fired you from the taxi park, and you won't make much money as a loader. Wait, is it all because of me? With a sigh, Tatiana asked, You were late for the challenge, and you were kicked out? Almost. Just being late became the reason. And seriously, the boss has been pointing a finger at me for a long time. He hated me from the first days. He thought I was a competitor in the career ladder. And why? I somehow showed the boss's initiative and said what better oils to buy for cars. And then several times suggested my idea. Well, in general, I paid for this. Yes, the boss is a beast. Laughing, Tatiana paraded. Well, a beast is not a beast, but an egoist is proud, that's for sure. Well, it's okay, he'll still remember me. Together they cooked a light dinner and had a little snack. Jaeger paid attention to the fact that Tatiana no longer behaves as if she had seen him for the first time. It is certain that she has a sympathy for him. He asked politely, Will you give birth in a regular maternity home or in a paid clinic? Now you have such opportunities. Listen, what about this brother? Where is he? You said that his guilt got behind bars. Tatiana answered that time will show and added, Yes, that's right. Alexei led me through all the articles. I entrusted him with my business. Rather, I took him into the company to help him run the accounting and deal with the personnel issues. And what? Did not you manage? Jaeger was interested. Not exactly. He did so that I got into the field of tax service. Moreover, he set up employees against me. In general, I turned out to be a fraud, and I was paying for everything. And, to be honest, I don't regret it at all because I got a priceless experience. What kind of experience is this, if not a secret? I learned to survive in difficult situations. In addition, I can distinguish people by the principle of good or evil. You know, I went through almost the same school when I was in the shelter. And it seems to me that we have similar fates. Stay with me. I'll sleep in the hall, and I'll lie on the kitchen couch myself. Tatiana agreed. Moreover, she was not going to leave. After all, I was just looking for Igor. She liked him even then the first time they met, and she decided that no matter what, she would not look for a good taxi driver. But as it turned out, he was fired because of her. And Tatiana, feeling her guilt, thought about fixing the situation. She saw how kind-hearted he was to the car, because for him it was not just a pile of iron, but a real friend. Falling asleep in a new apartment, Tatiana already thoughtfully saw herself next to Igor. It remains only to find out how he treats other people's children. Her story about how she got pregnant in prison made an indelible impression on him. In the morning, she heard the sound of the dishes. For the first time in many years, this noise did not cause irritation. Tatiana just remembered how she rose almost with the first roosters in the colony, but it was now that the knock on the dishes was pleasant to hear, and she went to the kitchen. Good morning, Igor. Good morning, Tanya. Why are you up so early? I'm just preparing breakfast, so I'll have to wait a little. I just couldn't sleep well. I was thinking about us. Tanya said carefully. What do you mean? Igor asked, pretending that he doesn't understand anything. I didn't tell you everything. There are other things that you also need to know. Wow, so I'll have to be even more surprised? Igor asked excitedly. I thought that yesterday you put a point in your past, and you don't want to go back there anymore. The past is far behind, Tatiana replied. But there are things that need to be completed to finally put an end to it. And in this connection, I would like to ask you for help. I'm sorry for being so sudden, but I can't do without you. Great. I'm back to the day when we first met. Jaeger happily said, putting 2 plates of fried eggs on the table. And it looks like I would have to go all the way from taxi driver to loader again. Jaeger, there are not many people left, and I need to return what I lost. I talked about how my cousin gave a trip to the colony yesterday. So he and his mother took over my business. I need to punish them, take my company from them. And Igor hugged her machinefully. He felt a shiver under his hands, and his heart was even stronger. In front of him stood a helpless girl, although rich. And now, in his strength, to help her. And if he does not do this, then all his life he will be to himself. Having held her hair, Igor said, Okay, I'll help you, but I don't know what. After all, your relatives are probably influential people, and they have connections that we definitely can't get through. Tatiana took the documents out of her purse and pulled them through to Igor. Here, all the money that is on my account. Looking at her with surprise, Igor asked, Wait, but you said they deprived you of everything, and there is a whole state here. Yes, exactly. Tatiana answered with weight in her voice. They took not only the firm, but also the father. He died when I was in the colony. The news came when he was already buried. I was not even allowed to say goodbye to him. Igor hugged her again, but even kissed her. He did this without any preparation, in a rush of emotions. And Tatiana answered. She pressed her whole body against him, as much as possible, because of the rounded spleen. The young people stood for almost a minute, without releasing each other from strong clutches. It seemed that 2 lovers met after a long separation. This time, there was really a spark of mutual feelings between them, and Jaeger, without giving himself a report, said, I like you, Tanya. And you are me, Jaeger. I still then realized that we would be together. You just did not react so violently to the fact that you had a former prisoner in front of you. What was I supposed to do? Scream and drive you out of the car? I don't know, but people are often confused or look at those who came from prison. I don't care, I will never reproach you. And let's see what can be done with your company. So, I took a part of the money from the account, but not all. Tatiana showed the numbers indicated in the documents and checks. I had to get myself in order and pay important people to find you. Igor suddenly thought that Tatiana could turn to his former boss. And to clarify this moment, he asked an intriguing question. Incidentally, Sergei Petrovich did not help you in this. I don't know who you are, but if it's important to you, then no, Tatiana replied sharply. Other people helped me, but I couldn't wait for more of them. They tried so hard, realizing what they were going for. Now I need to agree with the lawyers and force Maki with her son to return my firm. Igor agreed to help Tatiana, and without any money. For him, it was now the principal's business. He knew what betrayal was and what it was like to be humiliated. Together, they went to the most experienced lawyer in the city. And he, after long negotiations, gave a word that would help to figure out this confusing problem. It turns out that not long before his death, Tatiana's father opened her account and transferred almost all of his savings there. Tatiana's stepmother was in an unconscious state, but if she had sniffed, she would have forced Yevgeny Maximovich to give her access to the money. So the father took care of his future daughter, but could not help but avoid the conclusion. And it is possible that Tampo already tried to buy back his guilt. This is why Tatiana decided to go to the bank. She understood that only then she could return the firm and clear her reputation. Igor tried his best. He even had to resign from his new job. He was watching what the mother and her son were doing. Alexei lived on what is called a wide leg. He had no problem with money because everything was business. Watching how this guy behaves, Igor determined a few moments. And first of all, this is relaxation, lack of vigilance, and unwillingness to do something more or less serious. There was no comparison between the mother and the son. She was in charge of the order at the firm and was able to manage the whole process. It seems that her whole life was spinning in business. Igor told Tatiana that he had seen her. That's good. So they don't expect my appearance. With a cunning look, she said, we must act decisively so that they do not have time to retreat. No doubt that these people have prepared spare options in case of emergency situations. You are more likely to be caught, Tanya, said Jaeger. I just want everything to be fine with you. The hired lawyers prepared documents for the court, and Tatiana and Jaeger, in the meantime, made up their minds. Tatiana took the money from the account and spent it on the purchase of a family nest. None of them doubted that this was the beginning of a joint life. The words of the old woman from the bus stop and the neighbor, Claudia Ivanovna, turned out to be prophetic. Igor found his way in this difficult life. Fate thanked him for his kindness. Since childhood, he has tried to help everyone, despite the fact that sometimes it was not easy for him himself. And these qualities made him a strong and resilient person. That's why he didn't fear difficulties and didn't save before helping Tatiana, although he couldn't help but understand how it could all end. Soon Tatiana bought him a gorgeous car. Igor didn't want to accept such a gift at first, but then agreed, saying that time would come and he would definitely pay. Having taken on the role of an assistant, Jaeger himself supported the contact with the lawyers. At some point they told him that Irina Petrovna, Machika Tatiana, and Alexei had moved. Apparently, they felt danger or someone had reported to them that a legal business owner was following them. Jaeger passed the words of Tatiana's lawyers. As you can see, your fuss remained unnoticed. And well, let them know that they will soon have to answer for everything. By the way, and how do you like the car? I guess with your tastes. Thank you, Tanya. This is the best gift in my life. Igor answered and hugged Tatiana. Feeling the warmth all over her body, she put her head on his shoulder and suddenly heard Igor whisper, "You are my good ones. I will see you soon." Not only that, he stroked her belly. Tatiana understood. Igor definitely will not push her and her future children. She was not wrong with the choice. He is exactly the person with whom she will be fine. And it does not matter what other difficulties we will have to overcome. The main thing is that now they are together, they will not be separated by anything. However, the evil mother of Irina Petrovna did not make herself wait long. She sent to Tatiana's house her illegitimate son Alexei. But she was unlucky because Igor managed to intercept him. They ran into each other right next to the entrance. Igor immediately recognized his cousin, Tatiana. "Well, hello there. What's the hurry? You're not at the sisters?" "I'm sorry, but we don't seem to know each other," Alexei whispered, and he suddenly moved away. Igor realized that he did not expect such a meeting and decided to go to the break-in. "We are not so familiar, although I have heard about you, and I am not happy that you and your mom have done something." "What the hell? Let me pass." Alexei was... I cut his stomach a little and put him in my car. Now nobody will bother us. Report who made you put Tanya in the wrong place and send her to jail. And don't try to lie. I'll find out the truth anyway. But then it will get even worse, and I'm not kidding. Alexei was... So she asked me to make the daughter of that businessman disappear for a while. And you didn't think of anything else to put her in jail? Jaeger asked angrily. What was left for me to do? Not to kill her in the very case. Well, at least here your brains worked in the right direction. What else do you know? I swear, nothing more. Alexei was bitterly upset. I don't believe it. And do you know why? Why? Because Tanya's father died suddenly. Don't you think it's strange? But he was no longer young. So, probably the heart was taken. The greedy spoke to Alexei and looked at Igor from under the forehead. Seriously? And you think I believe that? He was only... And Yevgeny Maximovich did not complain about his health. I already learned something, as you can see. I did not sit down, folding my hands, and check your whole underpants with my mother. You're on my hook, and don't even think about setting up the camera. He didn't have time to finish his last words when he got a phone call. It was Tanya. Yes, darling, I'll be back soon. I heard her scream and scream in the phone. I have a fight. I need to go to the hospital urgently. Igor looked at Alexei and said in a grumpy face, Go, I'm letting you go for now, but it's only for now. Alexei Pulia flew out of his car and ran away from the yard. And Igor, meanwhile, went to his apartment, assessed the situation, and called an ambulance. Together with Tanya, he arrived at the maternity hospital, but he was not allowed inside. We had to wait for the doctor to come out and tell us what was wrong with her and how she felt. In half an hour, a waitress appeared. "You did a good job not to get lost. Your wife will stay with us for the time being. The fights were difficult, but there are predictions that she will give birth soon." "Doctor, but it's still at least 2 weeks. I understand your worries, but nature dictates when your children will appear. And it's great that you will have twins. You need to rejoice and thank God for such a generous gift." "Thank you, but they are not." Igor wanted to say that the children are not from him, but he stopped. In addition, the doctor considered them husband and wife. Inside, everything turned upside down, and he hurried out into the street. At this very moment, a window opened on the second floor, and Tanya looked out from there. She looked at Jaeger and shouted out loud, "I love you." After a deep breath, Jaeger answered in the same way, "I love you and our children." Can you imagine? The doctor decided that we are husband and wife. "And you didn't like that he said that?" Tatiana asked. "On the contrary, I liked it, and I already know what needs to be done to do this." "Wait, don't go away. Stay with me a little longer," Tatiana asked, and pressed on like she was on the frame. "I didn't have time to do anything. I need to continue to act and take the firm. What do you say? Maybe leave everything as it is." "But no, Tanya, you get ready for the family, and I'll finish this business myself." After these words, Igor broke out of place, got into the car, and went to the lawyer's office. However, he was already there. "Yegor Vasilyevic, sit down." The lawyer offered him a chair. "Yes, thank you. We are ready. We can start the process tomorrow. And I will say more. Irina Petrovna has led the company to bankruptcy." "But how is it?" "Timur Edjardovic," Yegor called. "Did we start all this in vain?" "No, not in vain. I found the way out for the right people, and they stopped the process of collapse. I think that Tatiana Yevgenyevna will receive the company in a more or less tolerable condition. Of course, it will be necessary to invest in order to correct the situation, but given her financial capabilities, I believe that this will not be a problem." "You are right, Timur Edjardovic. But Tanya will not be able to take part in this yet. She is now at the hospital in the maternity hospital and can give birth at any minute." "I understand you, Yegor Vasilyevic. We will act through you. Moreover, you know all the documents." After Igor drove to Alexei, he immediately told his mother about it. And they even wanted to report to the police, but changed their mind since they received a notice to court. In addition, the benefactors warned that this would be a serious investigation, and it is better to solve everything now peacefully than later look at the sky in a cell. Irina Petrovna did not take these warnings and said that she was free to decide how to deal with the firm herself. But her son refused all duties and began to pack things. He realized that he would definitely be pressed to the wall and all the information would be shaken. Therefore, in order to at least somehow minimize negative consequences for himself, he took the risk to confess to everything. He himself called Igor and asked for a conversation. During the conversation, Alexei told him that his mother poisoned Yevgeny Maximovich. However, he personally did not see anything. But together with that, Irina Petrovna somehow spoke after Tatiana's father's death that her medicine worked and the old money bag went to that world. All this information immediately got to the police, and they arrested Irina Petrovna. However, they did not have direct evidence, and she was still being cheated. For the cooperation with the law enforcement and sincere confession, Alexei was left under house arrest. But this was only for a while, because after the trial, he may have been threatened with a real term of imprisonment. It took several days to get this insidious club right. And all this time, Igor came to Tanya every day. He no longer imagined himself without her, and she was glad that someone needed her. And there, Yegor, standing on one knee, made that suggestion. It was so touching that Tatiana just couldn't help but agree. She said that for her this is true happiness, and began to kiss Yegor. Yes, so that she grabbed her belly and screamed. The fights began again, and it seems that the waters are leaving. Immediately, the entire medical staff rushed and took her to the maternity ward. Yegor, of course, went down and began to wait. He sat patiently for 3 hours in one place until the doctor finally came out and said, "Congratulations, Dad." boys. One is, the other is. At this moment, Jaeger cried and hugged the doctor tightly. How happy I am that I have 2 sons. Then he uttered this phrase again, but already so loud that it seemed that all the patients of the maternity hospital heard. Even Tatiana smiled when she heard it. She was lying in her room, and next to her were 2 of her babies. She looked at them, and tears flowed down her face. But these were tears of joy. The next day, Jaeger again arrived at the lawyer's office. Timur Edredovic told him that Irina Petrovna was accused of fraud and would be released in the near future. But Alexei may get a conditional term. But the most important thing was added by the lawyer. We will be able to return Tatiana Evgenievna to the firm. Now we are preparing the documents, and I think that in a week or 2 everything will be over. In the meantime, I congratulate you on the birth of children, and let everything be fine with you. Thank you, Timur Edredovic, but I know everything. That's why I say that everything will be fine. Igor realized that the lawyer was aware of all events, and he will definitely keep it a secret. A week passed, and Tatiana was preparing for her graduation. Igor came to pick her up in the car. He decided to wait until she was picked up and took a bouquet of flowers and champagne with him in advance. A minute later, a taxi came into the yard, and Sergei Petrovich left. He met Igor with a look and said loudly, "What people? What? You work as a taxi driver again? And who entrusted you with such an expensive car? And you don't have a problem, Sergei Petrovich." Igor laughed. "This is my personal car, and here is your car. It looks like it's asking for repairs. And it's been a long time. Come on, it can't be." And at that time, Tatiana and the children appeared. "Honey, are you tired of waiting for us?" "No, darling. Why are you?" "I'm ready to wait forever." Kissing Tatiana, Igor turned to Sergei Petrovich and said in sarcasm, "And how did this hinder you from the boss to ordinary taxi drivers?" He did not listen any further, although Sergei Petrovich was still mumbling something. It was not up to him, because the most delightful thing in their lives happened. A week later, Tatiana came to the lawyers herself and thanked them for a successful completion of the case. Her firm returned to the legal owner. Timur Edredovic tried his best and immediately issued all the necessary documents. He also spoke on the court as a defender and brought the evidence that how Irina Petrovna and her son Alexei took business from Tatiana Yevgenyevna in a deceitful way. She regained her reputation and was able to stop the bankruptcy process. Together with Igor, they decided to run the company. And in order not to lose the driving experience, he agreed to be her personal driver. What? Then it's better. You don't have to take a person from the side. Okay, darling, but this is only as a subcontract. For the rest of the time, you're my assistant. Irina Petrovna received the maximum term on this article and went to jail. Alexei was recognized as a participant, but for working with the investigation and wrote a sincere confession. He was suspended for a conditional term, and no one heard about him anymore. He went to the village and decided to do some housework there. Soon Tatiana and Igor filed a complaint to the registry office. They went to meet them, and in a week they signed. The words of the old woman at the bus stop came true, and they also had a holiday. And it's good that Jaeger did not refuse his happiness. They invited both Klavdia Ivanovna and the doctor from the maternity hospital to the wedding, because they had no one to call them. Tatiana was left without parents. Jaeger was orphan. So their fate is 1 and 2. After the birth of the baby, they were registered as Jaeger. He insisted on this, saying that they shouldn't be brought up in an incomplete family. Tatiana did not object, because she saw her future only with Igor. On the other hand, her endurance can only be envied. She has been through so much and has not fallen into the spirit of a company with difficulty, but they have pulled out of a financial crisis. Now she is fully functioning and brings income. However, almost the entire team had to change. They were soaked with hatred for Tatiana, and they couldn't be left behind. Igor himself hired new employees, and they all went through his inspection system. Tanya didn't forget about her father and chose the time to come to his grave. He was buried next to his mother, although he was lucky. Tanya stood near the tomb for a long time and cried. Fate went cruel with her, but she also fixed the mistakes made. Or maybe these parents helped her to get out of that world and find your love.